I'm here with Melissa Dodd-Ruesing and found her story on Forks Over Knives. And Melissa, thanks for spending the time to talk with me. Maybe we could just start off with a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Great, sure. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I've been here pretty much all my life. I've traveled a little bit here and there, but I'm a single mom, two kids, and so I'm pretty planted here for a while.
And I think so far you started to say, earlier you've lost around 80 pounds. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, can we kind of go back and maybe start off with, like childhood? Were you obviously you were bigger as an adult, so were you
hmm
larger as a child? Is this something that came on later in life?
No, actually, I've most of my life. I would say probably about the age of 7 is when I started putting on some weight, and I remember probably about 9 going to for a physical, for school, the usual thing, and the doctor calling me chunky, and kind of winked at my mom, and I was like, "What?" And then it just kind of literally grew from there. I I was always active. I played sports, played soccer, played softball, but I had a big appetite. I come from bigger people and Italian Irish family, so we like to eat. So it was it was in my DNA, but it was also just environmental. So I always we grew up eating a lot, overeating. So it was habitual.
Yeah, and what did food look like in your house growing up?
A lot of it. A lot of it. My mom made average dinners, but we always you never just had one helping. You always had seconds or even thirds of those comfort foods like mashed potatoes or things with lots of cheese or whatever on it. And then when we would get together with family, it was crazy. There was always so much food, and there still is to this day. That it's just a lot of food. I just don't partake the way I used to, and now I'm the oddball.
Yeah, and I think I saw you mention somewhere, at some point in time, you realized, and looking back, that food had a huge emotional tie for you.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I don't know if you've thought about it a ton, but as far as like looking back now, where did that start? Why was that such a problem? How did it kind of have such a strong hold on you?
Honestly, I turn to food for comfort. I grew up in a bit of an abusive situation, so without going into great detail, I came from a divorced family. My dad he left and gave me up for adoption to my stepdad, and we just didn't have a good relationship, and so I just turned to food a lot. So anytime I was having a lot of stress, a lot of problems, food is where I sought comfort. So unfortunately, that's when I started, really growing outwardly instead of upwardly, because that was something that I got attached to. I mean, it was easily accessible too, though, because of our family and our environment. There was always food around. And overeating was just, it wasn't a big deal. We all did it, but I would go to, I wouldn't say extremes, but I definitely would turn to food for comfort when I wasn't, feeling great about myself.
And obviously, it's been a long, been a little while. You said your mom, you have two kids. What was kind of the ascent from, developing those emotional habits and all those kinds of things to like where you were at your biggest? What, can you kind of take me through life and maybe how the weight accompanied that, between then and when you were your biggest?
I guess I just came to accept that I was going to, at least my former self, I accepted the fact that I was just going to be, quote, fat, because everybody in my family was big. And when I got to my heaviest, I was like the biggest person in the family. And that by no means was that a great thing. Things started changing for me then when I realized I was the biggest. But, it was such a habit. It was such a thing to just, go out to eat, eat, not great foods. We just center so much of our lives, my family did, and still does, around food. And so I guess I thought it was a good thing that I just accept the fact that I'm going to be a bigger person. So, and I'd just be happy with it. So then I just ate whatever I wanted. And I worked in the restaurant industry. So you can imagine I had even more access to food, plenty of alcohol and food. I never really drank to excess, but I partied with the best of them, and then you know how that goes. Then food comes along with it. And then it's this vicious cycle, and so my diet consisted of beer and pizza and chicken wings and all that great stuff that just was packing on the pounds. So when I got to my heaviest, that those are the kinds of things that I was taking in a lot of, and I just thought, well, this is my destiny. I thought that because of where I came from and my family, and this is what I was going to be.
Yeah, in that article on Forks Over Knives, you said this: for most of my life, I was a real meat lover. I loved bacon cheeseburgers and
Mm-hmm.
had a meat laden diet. Did you ever have any? I know you got to the point where you were heaviest, but previous to that point, was there ever any point where you tried cutting out things or tried anything that would kind of reverse that cycle or reverse or even change up your diet or your taste at all?
The only things I did prior to when I really started to make the change, the only things I really did was I would try to diet. So, I tried the Weight Watchers diet. I tried a few different things. I tried Atkins, which there's even more meat now, So that was like, oh, great, I can eat all the meat I want. And that was no good.
You're like, this is the perfect diet for me.
Right. I thought it was. But, you know, I would, I'm sure you're going to totally get this, but, you get in this mindset where, okay, well, I'm going to try to eat healthier because I want to lose weight. I was associated eating healthy with losing weight, not because you should just eat healthier so that, your body can be at its optimal performance level or whatever, so that you fight off disease. I thought it was more of a punishment, really. I thought that you go on a diet, that means you can't have this and you can't have that. And then it would only last for a short time, and then I would rebel and go and binge on whatever I wanted and just say the heck with it and just be in that vicious cycle all over again. So I didn't really make good changes that would stick.
In that same thing, you said, at my heaviest, I was 300 pounds. I was morbidly obese and on 5 medications, pre-diabetic, had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diagnosed with fatty liver disease. That does not sound like a fantastic place to be. Can you talk about life at that point a little bit? Where you're at, and also kind of
Yeah.
physically what was going on.
Yeah. I was at a really stressful point in my life then. And food was my addiction. I didn't realize that I had a food addiction. And it's hard when you have a food addiction because it's not like you can go to rehab like you would drugs or alcohol. That's, in my mind. So I was just that was a really hard time for me. And what kind of woke me up was I was at home one night and I started getting really sweaty. I started showing all these signs and symptoms of what I thought could have been a heart attack. And I took a ride in the ambulance to the hospital. And it was really, really scary because I thought, okay, this is going to be it. I'm going to be one of those statistics, morbidly obese, female, just going to either have a stroke or a heart attack. And what's it going to do to my family? What's it going to do to my kids? So I started kind of getting the wake up calls. And then after I followed up, and it didn't turn out that it was a heart attack, it was some, acid reflux and some other things. Yeah, and then I'm on medications for that. I'm on medication, you start in that medication cycle, and then you have side effects and symptoms and whatever. But what really got me was I was really scared of becoming a diabetic because diabetes runs rampant in my family, as you might imagine, because of all of our eating habits. But when I was so close to being diabetic and with the cholesterol and the blood pressure, and then they said I had fatty liver disease, I'm like, I got to do something here because I'm going to be a stat. I'm going to, leave my kids without their mother. And that really scared the heck out of me. And that's when I started thinking I need to do something different.
And so was that the point, I know I saw and you mentioned that you had the lap band surgery. What, what took you from the place that you were from that? Was that kind of the next step?
Yeah, I kind of made the decision to do something drastic, and I thought that would be a good tool. I didn't want to go as far as the Roux-en-Y because that was really dangerous. And me being in the healthcare industry, I know enough of those things to where I can be a little more cautious. So I chose to do the lap band surgery, and I was going to say unfortunately, but you can look at it two different ways. I could say unfortunately I was in that 2 percentile, but my body rejected it and it had to be removed 2 weeks after it was put in. But then I can really stand back and say, fortunately for me, I learned so much from that whole terrible experience that I realized that I had to make changes within myself and within my mindset. I couldn't just use an external tool. Not to say that that doesn't work for people. I mean, I think I've seen great results with a lot of people, but until you really can change your mindset, I don't think you can maintain, even if you lose a big amount of weight, to be able to maintain it and to really put health first. You need to change your mindset versus, or if you can do that and something mechanical, but it didn't work for me. So I knew that I had no other option but to make some changes.
So, and what do you mind just kind of briefly talking about what actually happened with the lap band surgery? Because I know you said you had it, but then you were in the 2 percentile. What does that really kind of mean?
It just means that my body rejected it. It's like when you get some sort of a transplant surgery, your body sometimes will reject the tissue or reject the mechanical device, and that's what my body did. So when I was released to go home, I was home for a few days, and then I started getting really sick. It was like uncontrollable vomiting, and kept going into spasms. I couldn't keep anything down, and so then I was when I had to go back go back to the hospital. They realized that my body was just not taking, and it was just kept going into spasm, and it was just not going to stop. And so there was a few other details that he talked about, but he just like I really think it needs to come out. You're just not going to do well with this at all. And then after it took it out, tried to tell me that maybe I could come back at a later date and have a different type of surgery done. And I said, no, thanks. I think I'll do this on my own now.
Wow. I think I saw that, in your recovery from the surgery is where you kind of made the connection
Mm-hmm.
to the positive benefits that food could have for your body and also your wound recovery. Can you kind of talk about that and what happened there?
Well, when I was trying to recover, I was, supposed to be on a liquid diet for, a few weeks, and then you go into soft foods, and then you kind of gradually get back to somewhat normal. And I kind of had an aha moment as I was sitting on the couch and I was crying because I was just miserable because I wanted to eat something. I wanted the comfort of eating food. And I was telling myself, if I could just have something just so small, just a spoonful of something like homemade mac and cheese or something like warm and comforting. And I was like, wow, okay. It was just like, bam, it just hit me. I have an addiction to food. I have an addiction to it because of how it makes me feel. To just feel like if I could just have a bite of something like that would change my mood. Like, okay, I really have to deal with this, and I wasn't willing to deal with it before. People talk about emotional eating, and I was like, well, sure, I eat when I'm happy. I eat when I'm sad. I eat when I'm angry. I eat all the time, all emotions, But I didn't realize how much of an addiction that I had to where it wasn't a good for me. So that's when I started I had a lot of self-realization. I came out of it a lot more aware of myself. And I knew that I kind of had to be on a mission to make things better for myself because it was important enough to me and, to my kids. And I wanted to teach them something different too, through myself.
So obviously it's highly important to you. Success is highly important, in really kind of turning the ship around. What did those first days and weeks look like to you in terms of, because my thought is that for a lot of people, maybe for yourself when you first hear it, when you're at that highest weight, it can seem like a insurmountable mountain to climb. But,
Yeah.
how do you kind of get to day one and then think about what's going to happen day one, day two, and then look forward into, day 10,000? Like, what did those
Right.
first days and where was your mind kind of at that moment?
Well, it is really overwhelming when you have so much weight to lose. You feel like, okay, sure, I might be able to lose a couple pounds, but I can put it back on so quickly that you feel like it's futile. You're so heavy. You've gotten to that point where it is very, very overwhelming. Honestly, I just started. I started taking in more fruits and vegetables was a big thing for me. That's when I started, with the Juice Plus. I started educating myself though. That was the biggest thing, is educating myself through just learning about nutrition and, watching the movie Forks Over Knives. I started listening. I started being more open to people talking to me about stuff. Whereas before I was like, no, don't tell me about that. Or I didn't want to hear it because you want to talk to me about organic foods, you're weird. You're goofy. You're one of those, which now I'm one of those. But I always thought, oh, you're a health nut, stay away, because I was intimidated, because I knew that at that point, my former self couldn't handle what it would take to do what I'm doing now. And I can't really tell you where the flip of the switch was. It was a gradual thing for me. I started feeling better. I started feeling more energetic. And so the more I started doing that and taking in better foods, the more I learned about stuff. And so the more I would take in better foods. And it was just kind of this, kind of coming back and forth between, actually taking the action to eat better and then, learning about it, and then taking the action to put more fruits and vegetables in my body instead of those bacon cheeseburgers and pizza and whatever. Then it reduced my cravings for those things. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I never had a craving for that kind of stuff, but it sure reduced it to where, I was doing it on a rare occasion instead of, all the time.
Yeah. And then did you have to kind of rethink, cooking and, like, did it take, I mean, I'm thinking if you're on a fairly, just from what you talked about eating, fairly fat heavy diet, also oily. I know for myself, that just completely, glazes over the taste buds.
Right.
So that only
Right.
something fatty or sugary or salty really kind of,
Right.
what did that process of changing foods and whatnot look like for you, and how did you kind of get through that?
Well, fortunately for me, I have a knack for being in the kitchen, so I do like to explore. Um, I started out, like I had said previously, that I did that Atkins diet. Well, then I, went into that whole paleo thing, which again, more meat laden. So when I started really learning about the power of fruits and vegetables, and I started learning about plant-based foods, I started doing some work with the Plant Nutrition Project here in St. Louis, and they're kind of, a good base for a lot of education, a lot of learning. So when I started doing that, I started just making the switch in my mind that eating healthy wasn't about what you can't have, it's about what you can have. So once I kind of made that switch, then I started exploring more. So I started substituting things like shiitake mushrooms or lentils for, lentils for ground beef, for shiitake mushrooms for chicken, tofu, those kinds of things. And it was kind of fun for me to explore and to try different flavors. So that was a benefit for me, that I like to play in the kitchen. And so once I started doing that, then I was able to just be more successful and, try different restaurants and those kinds of things that, had that same kind of menu.
Yeah, I'm curious, you're a parent, you're a single parent, two
Mm-hmm.
kids. I know for a lot of people, the common thing is, I just don't have time to do all the prep, or I don't have time to do this, or, it's really easy to find an excuse whenever you don't have kids and you don't have other people who rely on you, for survival. But whenever you do,
Right.
obviously it's different. How maybe then, or maybe how now, do you kind of balance some of that stuff? And maybe that could even come in the form of, tips for people, because I don't have kids. A lot of times people say, oh, well, you can spend all day Sunday prepping food, or you can spend,
No.
time. So, I'm just curious if you can give any insight into that, both in terms of, like, as you were kind of learning through the process, but also, what does that look like today?
It's kind of evolved into, setting aside some time. We make time for what we want to. And for me, when I realized how important my health was, I decided to put that up on the top 10 of my priority list in life. So it does take some time. It takes a little bit of time to do some prep work. Now, I'm all about doing the easy stuff, the easiest stuff possible. So, and I actually help others with this. We have little cooking parties, and we have we teach people how to make the salad in the mason jar, which you can prep a few salads like for the week, and they stay well, so that you just grab and go. We do quinoa salads where a lot of fresh vegetables and mix it with quinoa and just like a little bit of a balsamic vinegar or those kinds of things. So it's a mixture of exploring the different kinds of foods, but then also making it really, really simple. So if you just set aside, just like you would anything else, if you set aside a little bit of time where you can do a little bit of prep work, it's going to make a world of difference for the week. And I'm not saying you have to do it all day, but it could be like 2 hours here, 2 hours there, where, you just kind of get into a routine. And like anything else, once you do it a few times, it can become habit. Of course, it takes 21 days to form a new habit. So you got to be consistent about it. But, it's just like working out. Working out is not one of my strong suits. And I know this, but I know that I need to create that habit. So I'm working toward that. But the food, I think I got that part down. But you have to set the intention, and you have to put a little bit of time aside. But on the flip side of that, there are more places now that offer healthier foods, which is great for the busy people, like whether you're a single mom or you're just single or whatever your life is. I like that there's kind of a movement going on with healthier food options and plant-based food. So like here in St. Louis, we've got a few restaurants that vegan type restaurants, plant-based restaurants. So when we don't have the time, we know we can go there and grab something good.
Awesome. Where are you at now as far as all your medical stuff? Obviously, you had kind of a bit of a list of things that you kind of dealt with and struggled with before, and I know you were on medications as well. Where are you at present day with all that?
The only thing I take every day is my Juice Plus and vitamin D. That's it. I'm off all my medications, and I guess for probably 3 years now, every time I've gone back for my blood work, I get the comment that, wow, your blood work is stellar. You should put it in a frame, put it on the wall. So for a 47-year-old female that still is overweight, thank goodness I'm not morbidly obese. I still have some more weight to lose, which I'm kind of in the middle of my marathon. My blood work is great. My blood work is excellent. So that makes me feel really good. And the last medication I came off of was even a thyroid medication. And I kind of did that without telling my doctor, kind of phased myself off of that just to see if I could do it. And I haven't looked back. It's been 3 years since I did that.
So I know you said you're kind of, as you said, in the middle of your marathon. You've lost 80 pounds. You still have some more that you'd like to lose. Mm-hmm. How do you and how have you kept yourself motivated? Whenever obviously you've come so far, but you obviously feel like you still have some distance ahead of you to go.
I think the biggest thing is I surround myself with people that are like-minded, as far as eating healthy. You can't do anything about your family. When I go to my family, I play little games in my head. Like, this might sound silly to some people, but my goal is to actually be able to see some of the plate that I'm putting food on. And, what I mean by that is my old self would pile so much food on that plate that you couldn't even see the bottom of the plate. Now I try to at least see spots of that plate because I have like sections in between, instead of just this mound of food. I kind of play games in my head with that, or, okay, just stop and wait 15 or 20 minutes before I think that I might want to have something else. So, the struggle's still there. I don't think the struggle ever completely goes away. Even just sitting and having dinner with my kids, sometimes I I make something that's really good and I just tend to overdo it a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, I need to stop. And I had to like physically just get away from it. Old habits for so many years are hard to break, but you just, it's all right here. It really is. I didn't realize how much of it it's all right here.
And I know for a lot of people, the family situation is not, you're kind of oftentimes a result of who you are for in good ways and bad, or because
Mm-hmm.
of your upbringing, the people, like you said, who are closest to you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any conversations with your family, or have you had any conversations with your family of like, hey, look, this is what I'm doing, you don't have to do it. Like, because I think for a lot of people, that's a huge hindrance, whether it's their kids eat differently, their spouse eats differently, their mother eats differently, and they feel like, partially because I think it's also kind of put on them, that oh, if you do that, then it's a direct attack on me. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're not friends anymore. We're not family anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You don't respect
Right.
me. You don't respect what I cooked for you.
Right.
Um, what does that look like these days for you? And coming from a place of being emotional about your eating.
Well, as far as family goes, we just don't talk about it. I tried in the beginning, because I was pretty gung ho about what was happening with me, and they all saw my success. They all saw, I mean, every time I'd come to a gathering, it's like, wow, you're looking great. How much more have you lost? But then if I tried to talk to anybody else in the family about it, I think they did. They took it personally, like, well, why are you telling me this? I don't want to do that. I don't want any part of that. And I think they get, and I can only say because I probably did it myself. When you're in a different state of mind, you get a little defensive, because you're afraid that you're not going to be as successful. So then, you just do like a little self-sabotage, So now it's just kind of my family. I love them all. They're crazy. They're funny. They're silly. They love to tease. So I get ostracized every time I go. Oh, well, what's this food? Is this non-GMO or is this GMO? I mean, I have an aunt who just thinks she's hilarious, and she just goes on and on like, well, I'm going to eat this because it's bad for me, but I know you're not going to eat it. I mean, they just kind of give me a hard time, but all in good fun. So it's kind of we don't really talk about it. I do my thing. They do theirs. And if they ever want, any advice or any guidance, they know where to come. But I'm not going to offer it up because that could be a sore subject with them. But with friends, like I said, I kind of surround myself with like-minded people. And so most of my friends and get together for dinner or go out, or people love to come to my house and I cook for them. They all know that it's going to be pretty healthy. I'm like the health police. For some reason, they think, oh, at work, well, is your lunch, is that Melissa approved? I'm like, how did I become the authority? I didn't ask for that, but it just kind of happened.
Well, it sounds like you've earned it, and obviously if they've seen you come through it, then they can see the clear results both before and after. Anything about this whole experience, this whole journey where you're at now that has surprised you? Whether it's on the physical side, on the emotional side, on the mental side, anything that's you just plain weren't expecting.
I think what I wasn't expecting is how much of it was mental and emotional. I didn't realize how much more confident and powerful that you can feel just by, dropping the weight. I also was surprised about, the physical changes that go on in your body, like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. And then, oh, I wasn't feeling so good because, your body kind of like, it changes. So you just kind of have to be aware of that and try to take care of yourself. Like, so I do more self-care than I have ever done before, getting massages or just making sure that, everything's good and in alignment. Because when you start taking a bunch of weight off of you, your body starts kind of going, where is the stability of the bigger gut or whatever, but I think the mental and emotional is what surprised me the most.
And then looking forward, where do you see yourself? Do you have any goals that you're working towards? What's kind of on the horizon for you?
Oh gosh, a lot. We actually we didn't do the marathon. We did the 5K because I just wanted to kind of introduce my kids to it. And it was the first, formal race I ever did, but we did the St. Jude this past December. So my big goal for 2017 is to do the half marathon. And other than that, a lot of, I don't know, so many events, but, there's hiking trips on the horizon, there's cycling on the horizon. There's just a lot of fitness where my former self would have thought going on a vacation meant going and sitting on the beach and drinking and eating a lot, or going on a cruise. But now my thoughts of vacation are going to the mountains and hiking or mountain biking or, just anything outdoors, so that's changed for me quite a bit.
That's outstanding. And then, if you could give, and it sounds like you do this often, if you could give some advice for somebody who's at the beginning of this journey, who's hearing this and just trying to figure things out, trying to navigate, what that next step looks like, what advice would you give to that person?
I would say, my best advice would be open, and be open to trying new things. So, you might try some new eating habits, but don't go on a diet. Diets don't work. Just try some new things. And if you fail on a Thursday, you just get back up and try it over again on Friday. Just because you fall off the wagon, so to speak, doesn't mean you can't get back on. And you might fall off every day. Just get back on and just keep trying. That's my best advice. And you just, it's basic things, eating healthier consists of, eating more fruits and vegetables, drinking more water. If you can stay pretty consistent and do it, like I said, 21 days to develop a habit, you get small wins, and all those small wins add up to big wins. So just stay the course because you're worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that last part, you're worth it, is maybe one of the most important.
It's I did not realize my self-worth years ago and for most of my life. So I get it now, and I feel more empowered now than I ever have. And knowing that I'm worth it and putting that work into myself, it feels really good.
That's great. And then if you could go back in time and have a conversation with that, gal who was about to undergo lap band surgery or, before then, and give some words of encouragement or just some kind words to that person, what would you say?
I'd probably say don't do the lap band surgery, because that was a really bad experience that now I'm over it and I learned a lot from. But I mean, sometimes you have to go through hard things to learn. I think my thing I would say to myself is that, like we'd said before, you're worth it. You're worth so much more, and you need to realize that and put forth the energy to yourself. You're good at helping everybody else, but you need to help yourself. And that's what's most important. And everybody else can be impacted by that. It doesn't mean you're being selfish. It just means that you're taking care of yourself, so you'll be even better for everybody else.
That's awesome. And then lastly, where can people reach out to you, connect with you, and kind of find out what you have going on?
Facebook would be a great place. And that's where the story was on Forks Over Knives. I don't actually have my Facebook, but my actual address, but you just look me up by my name. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I love talking to people. I love sharing my experience. I love helping others try to kind of get to that point.
Great. Well, Melissa, thanks for the time. Congratulations on everything. You look great, and I'll look forward to hearing from you at the end of your marathon. And I know that you'll get there, and I'll look forward to hopefully connecting one day in person.
That's awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
All right. You too.